Bob Wankel crossing broad covers the Phillies. They're in action now. They got a 7-run lead, Bob. So how does Velasquez figure out how to blow this one?
Weird timing, this phone call. If we were talking about 20 minutes ago, it could have been all doom and gloom. But I guess after the top half of the first inning here in Game 2, you have to feel a little bit better about what you're seeing. I don't know how Vince Velasquez is going to fare here today, but I don't think he's pitching for a job in the rotation as opposed to a bullpen spot. They have so many doubleheaders forthcoming here that I think that this is what I would call a 5.5-man rotation for the remainder of the season. And I think that he will be that half guy. So we'll see what he does here today. He certainly has some room to work with.
Yeah, I know that they just scored 7, by the way, in the top half of the first inning. They lost Game 1 of the doubleheader. Let's kind of set the scene here. Spencer Howard pitched Game 1, 3 2/3. He had to leave the last game with a blister. He gets pulled out of this one here. How would you kind of chronicle his first 3 big league starts? I mean, is he the guy that you're looking at and saying, hey, they got something here for this season? I'm not saying to evaluate him long term. I'm talking about for this season here. Do you look at him and say, they got something here, this guy helps the rotation, or is he just, maybe he's not ready yet?
Yeah, I was definitely encouraged by what we saw today. A lot of late life on the fastball. The velocity was up a tick. He was generating more swings and misses with the fastball. So, I think that from a short-term perspective, you would have to look at his outing today and be encouraged by it. Off of that, I was a little bit surprised that they didn't give him an opportunity to work out of that 4th-inning jam. I know it's a 7-inning game. I know that you have to kind of play for what's in front of you, but just from a developmental aspect, you'd like to see him try to navigate his way out of that. And really, I don't fault Joe Girardi for the bullpen moves that he made late in the game, but you can kind of come back to the fact that he had to use the Olis Garrett in the 7th, but he may not have had to do that if he would have stuck with Spencer Howard and let him pitch through the 4th and perhaps even through the 5th inning. So, it's a questionable decision. It may have cost them Game 1, and I would have liked to have seen what Howard could have done in that spot.
I couldn't agree more. I definitely wanted to see Howard out. That 97-mile-per-hour fastball, I was loving every second of it. But let's flip to Alec Boehm, another prospect that we've been talking about forever, it seems. What do you like from his game to this point? It seems like his approach to the plate is definitely working. I guess we just question his defense. There are some plays that I'm almost blown away with how bad his defense was. Like simple throws to Rhys Hoskins at first base, making Rhys Hoskins work too hard, or a standard backhand play. His defense is worse than I expected it to be.
Yeah, Alec Boehm, what he gives you is an advanced approach, a mature approach beyond his years, certainly. A willingness to go the other way with pitches, I think, is a highlight of his approach at the plate. There's a lot to like about Alec Boehm from an offensive standpoint. But one thing that we have to see here, and it kind of goes along with your question or Mike's question a minute ago about short term, does he have the ability to consistently drive the ball into gaps? Can he pop a few home runs for this team as a corner infielder? You want to see some pops and power out of your corner infielders. You're certainly not getting it consistently with your first baseman. So my only question with Alec Boehm right now is, will he have average to slightly above average power? And that I'm not so sure about. But you can see the kid flat out hits. He knows what he's doing at the plate. From a defensive standpoint, I do have questions about his long-term viability to stick at third base. I've had those questions and concerns like a lot of people have all along. But I think some of what you're seeing out of him right now isn't so much an inability to play the position. I think it's more a matter of nerves and sort of just thinking through things too much as opposed to letting physical ability take over. It's one thing to not show consistent range, not be able to make plays going left to right, making plays coming in on balls. But really what we've seen from him so far is more of just guiding the ball across the infield on throws and maybe just overthinking things a little bit too much as opposed to letting the game come to him naturally. That said, I do have some concerns about his ability to make those types of plays long term. I think that he may be destined to play across the infield at first base.
That means Rhys Hoskins might need either a new address or would just become a designated hitter. The offense has been okay. I mean, it's starting to hit a little bit of a groove here. With that question, though, you got Hazley out. You've got Kingery kind of struggling. You just got Segura back. Is there an odd man out? Is Kingery an odd man out? I mean, Quinn today, he saw what he could do in the first game, getting an infield single. So how do you see this lineup? You know, we're there. What are they, 9-11? I mean, this season's getting late quick at the trade deadline coming up. Do you see Girardi settling in on a lineup, or is he going to be constantly tweaking this thing? And is there an odd man out?
I think when Hazley comes back, they'll use both Quinn and Hazley, continue to platoon those two guys. To me, Gene Segura is your second baseman so long as he's healthy, and Alex Bohm is your third baseman so long as he's healthy. And then you have to kind of account for Phil Gosselin and what he's done. And maybe he's not an everyday guy. I know that we kind of get excited, and I certainly have thought this myself. You see a guy that's been so productive, and you say they got to get him on the field more. It doesn't matter if it's against lefties, righties, but I still think that Phil Gosselin's probably better served against lefties only. I think it's a way of kind of keeping him and maximizing what you get out of him. That being said, I think it's very clear that Scott Kingery would have to become the odd man out in this scenario. I mean, Hazley and Quinn, I think, take down most of the starts in center. Obviously, you need to get McCutchen off of his feet occasionally in left field. So there's going to be opportunities for Kingery, but the guy has a 279 OPS, and if he had qualified, that would be the worst OPS in Major League Baseball by 202 points. So if the goal is to win now and win in 2020, I just don't know at this point, and things can change. Maybe he comes up with a 3-hit day, but I don't know how you can continue to stick with Scott Kingery at this point.
I want to touch on the starting rotation because it seems like when Aaron Nola's on the bump and Wheeler's on the bump, they're able to get some wins. They struggled with Jake Arrieta in Boston yesterday, but I'm pretty sure you asked Joe Girardi an interesting question about Zach Eflin after his last start, and his strikeout numbers are so high, it's crazy. It doesn't really fit what Zach Eflin is. Do you think that he's focusing too much on that, and that's hurting what he does best, which is, get the ground outs?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think that it's something worth keeping an eye on in his next few starts here. It's still probably too early to tell. I think anytime that you have a pitcher and you see that the K per 9 skyrockets the way that it has, I mean, he's elite right now, you would think that that would be a good thing. But Zach Eflin's game is based around getting weak contact and being efficient and getting that contact early on in counts, which hasn't really happened. And so you can almost be simultaneously encouraged by the K per 9 jumping the way it has, but then at the same time, you have to wonder, is he trying to be too cute? Is he trying to be too fine with his pitches? And is he missing too often now because he's not being as efficient? And the Phillies just moved on from a guy in Vince Velasquez, or I think are in the process of, as he's pitching today. I think they're in the process.
And he just gave up a home run, by the way.
Hard to believe. And I just don't think that that's what Zach Eflin's game is. Certainly, you would like to see the strikeout numbers jump up a little bit, but if it's going to be at the expense of being an inefficient 4 or 5 inning pitcher, getting hurt, more damage being done against you in between those strikeouts, then that's not something I'd be so excited about. So I think that it's a positive in a way, but I do believe that he's going to have to try to find a balance here moving forward.
Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, covers the Phillies, who, yes, they were up 7-0. They hand the ball to Velasquez. He walks the leadoff guy, and just like that, it's 7-2. And we are just in the first inning. Of course, it's just a 7-inning game because of the doubleheader today. 9-11, the Phillies are. You got this trade deadline sneaking up on us here. I know it's maybe a little early, but any thought that they decide that we need to fix this bullpen, or are they going to hope that, Suarez, I've heard Robertson might be back. They just going to try to stick in-house for this year because it's so odd?
Yeah, I think really it will depend on how the next 10 days go. It's crazy that you're only 19, 20 games now into your season, but you also are basically 10 days away from having to decide which direction you want to take things. There are a couple different factors that you have to consider here. More teams are going to be in the playoff hunt because of the expanded postseason format. You have not been able to see minor leaguers play this season, so some of the evaluation and how you might deal for minor league prospects is certainly a little different than it's been in years past. So those are two contextual things that every team sort of has to deal with. And then, I don't know. It really just depends what guys out there, what the cost of each of those players is going to be, because you do have some potential reinforcements coming. Ranger Suarez is close. Robertson, I believe, is probably looking at a first to second week of September return, and I don't know what you're going to get from him after he's been gone for more than a calendar year, but certainly it cannot be any worse than what they're trotting out there right now. That being said, I think it's a fluid situation. It's certainly an area that they would have to explore upgrades. I mean, there's just everybody knows. I think that Joe Girardi at this point knows what he has out there or doesn't have. And the general manager, while you can question his moves and how we've ended up at this point, not even the most naive or optimistic baseball talent evaluator would look at this bullpen and say, this is even close to being good enough.
They're starting pitching. I mean, Nola and Wheeler have been very good. Arrieta, Velasquez, I mean, he's dog manure. I mean, I can't stand him anymore. I'm done with him. Howard, lineup okay. Bullpen completely a mess. Are we looking at a team that can be a playoff team?
I think with the expanded format, they are a playoff team. Even right now, even in light of what we've seen over the past couple of days here, some tough losses, I think that this is a postseason team with the expanded playoff format. Do I think that they're a viable contender in the National League once that playoff format goes into effect? No, I don't. But for this team this year and where they're at, just getting into the postseason would be, I think if you polled most fans, an acceptable outcome. But they have a lot of work to do if they want to move into that next tier. And maybe they can do that in the next 10 days and maybe some things click. But I don't see that right now.
What are your thoughts on Hector Neris so far? I mean, he had those blown opportunities. Is he someone that can work in that position? I thought last year he did okay for what he was thrown into. He did have some blown saves here and there, but you look at his pitch. His pitch is the splitter, and his best pitch is something that he throws for a ball. I mean, does that work? Is this something that can work, Hector Neris?
Well, yeah. I mean, Brad Lidge made a career off of that, so it can work, but Hector Neris is very hot and cold, and he's always kind of been that way. If you go back to 2018, I think it was June of 2018, he was demoted twice. And a lot of people figured that he may never pitch again for the Phillies. And he did a great job coming back at the end of 2018. Success carried over into 2019. I mean, the arm is good. He's got swing and miss stuff. I do think that he can be a high-leverage reliever, but the problem is, in a perfect world, Hector Neris is probably one of 3 or 4 guys that can nail down a save for you in the 9th inning. And he's not an elite-level closer. He's not a guy that is going to be lights out. He's certainly proven that thus far. But of all the arms they still have out there, even in spite of his numbers, I probably feel more confident with him on the mound than anybody else, maybe outside of Adam Morgan at this point. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't feel great about Hector Neris as a closer, but I still think he's your best option in light of their current choices. And we'll see what happens with Jose Alvarez. And if they lose him for any extended amount of time, my goodness, they're in a lot of trouble because he has been one of the more dependable guys at this point. And I'm sure you guys have seen it by now, but he took a 105-mile-per-hour rocket off of his groin in Game 1, and I don't know what that means for his long-term availability.
Yeah, it didn't look like that felt too good. Although
it did not look good.
He had to be helped off. Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, Phillies in action today, doubleheader, and of course this season is flying right now. They are 20 games in, so they got about 40 games left to go. We'll keep an eye on that, the trade deadline, and more. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thanks, guys. I'll talk to you soon.